Good morning, teachers and Dr. Medrano. Again, I am Ms. Ludilin S. Mahinay, your first presenter for today, and I will be discussing the types of grammar, including the definition of grammar and syntax. Let's start with this broad term, grammar. Grammar is the whole system and structure of a language or of languages in general, usually taken as consisting of syntax and morphology and sometimes also phonology and semantics. So the word grammar comes from the Greek word grammatic technique, which means art of letters. It helps us understand the structure of language, from the single word to the collection of sentences into a paragraph. It also enables us to identify the function of words and their relation with one another. Grammar deals with words, forms of words, word combination, and the relationship between words. It tells us what words do in sentences and how they combine to convey meaning. So the meaning communicated by the language structures makes it functional and vital in real life. So that is grammar. Next, we have syntax. So syntax is under the word grammar. It is the arrangement of words in sentences, clauses, and phrases, and the study of the formation of sentences and the relationship of their component parts. Other details about syntactical structures will be discussed by my groupmates. Let's now proceed with the main topic, which is types of grammar. All well and good, but which type of grammar do we know? Linguists are able to point out that there are various types of grammar, or ways of defining and analyzing the structure and functions of language. These are just some of the types. We have mental grammar, developmental grammar, prescriptive grammar, descriptive grammar, and pedagogical grammar. So I will be discussing the two types, mental and the developmental grammar. The first type is the mental grammar. It is the internal linguistic knowledge in mind. Mental grammar is the generative grammar stored in the brain that allows a speaker to produce language that other speakers can understand. It is also known as competence grammar and linguistic competence. In linguistics, generative grammar is a grammar that indicates the structure and the interpretation of sentences that native speakers of a language accept as belonging to their language and part of the human brain. So we have Noam Chomsky. He popularized the idea of mental grammar. Since this type focuses on grammar as a mental entity, significant progress in characterizing the structure of languages has been made. So in mental grammar, babies and toddlers don't really receive grammar instruction on how to put words together in a sentence. Yet, they learn their native tongue just by exposure to it. Chomsky worked on what it was that was special about human brains that enabled this learning. So that is mental grammar. Next type is developmental grammar. It is a learner's grammar. It's like mental grammar in developmental stage. Type of language produced by learners who are in the process of learning a language. So it takes time for children to learn how to speak properly. Grammar development, on the other hand, is a slow and continuous process. In the language use of an L1 or L2 learner, which is the result of a normal pattern of development and is common among language learners. Although no two children are similar, parents can expect their children to adopt a general grammar progression. So children improve their ability to speak in proper English as they progress through the stages of grammar development. The first stage is called one-word stage. Roughly between 12 and 18 months, a child begins to speak in single-word utterances such as milk, mommy, and so on. So the words simply serve a naming function, but sometimes convey more complex meaning, which are holophrases. So the words that children learn within this age span or stage are predominantly nouns. Those words are called holophrases. For example, the word juice might mean I've finished my juice or I want more juice. Therefore, the single word is taking the place of a more complex grammar construction that the child hasn't learned yet. The second stage is two-word stage. Two-word sentences usually appear when the child is around 18 months old. Usually, the two words are in a grammatically correct sequence, such as subject plus verb, as in Jenny sleep, or verb plus object, as Susie juice, and subject plus complement, as in Daddy busy. Also, in this stage, when a child tries to repeat what an adult has said, it will miss out part of the sentence, but what is retained is usually grammatically correct. Just this example. The adult has said, "Look, Charlie, Ben's playing in the garden." So the child will say, "Play garden." The example shows how children in this stage focus on keywords. Words that convey less information, such as in or the, for example, are missed out. We also have to take note that during this stage, since children do not yet understand tenses or plurals, there may be some confusion as to what a child means during the two-word stage. It can also have several meanings depending on the context of the utterance. So it is important that we have to look on the actions of the child while she or he is saying something. The third stage is the telegraphic stage. From the age of about 2, children begin producing 3 and 4-word utterances. For example, some will be grammatically complete, such as Ami likes tea or Mommy sleeps upstairs, but others will have essential grammatical elements missing, such as Daddy home now or Laura broke plate. So these utterances are similar to some of those used in the two-word stage. They can often make sense, but key elements are missing. Progress during this stage is rapid. By the age of 5, children have usually mastered sentences containing more than one clause, conjunctions, and ing, ed, or s endings to words and verbs. These are known as inflectional affixes. Still under the third stage is the acquisition of inflections. Research indicates that there is a predictable pattern in the acquisition of inflectional affixes. These are word endings such as ed and ing. Functional words such as articles like a and the, and also auxiliary verbs seems to be acquired in a regular order. So, Brown, in 1973, studied children's language development between the ages of 20 months and 36 months. and found the sequence shown below occurred regularly. So the fixtures are also listed in the order in which they were acquired. So while Cruttenden in 1979 divided the acquisition of inflections into the following 3 stages. In the first stage, children memorize words on an individual basis. In the second stage, they show an awareness of the general rules of inflections. They observe that past tense forms usually end in ed. So instead of run as in RAN, they say rund as in RUNN plus ed. This kind of error is known as overgeneralization. The third stage, correct inflections are used by the children. Next is understanding grammatical rules. Children produce accurate grammatical constructions from an early age, and researchers have tried to determine if they have learned this themselves or have copied adult speech. So a famous experiment was carried out by Jean Berko in 1958, who showed children pictures of fictitious creatures he called wags. At first, the child was shown a picture of one creature and told this is a wag. Then they were shown a picture of two wags, and the children were asked to complete the sentence. Now, there are two blank. So children aged 3 and 4 replied wags. As they could never have heard this word before, it becomes clear that they were applying the rule that plural end in S. So however, children between the ages of 2.5 and 5 often overgeneralize with plurals. So we hear things like sheep and mouses. So in the same stage, children tend to ask questions, more questions. So research suggests that this happens in 3 stages. So the first stage or the first year, relying on intonation in the two-word stage. Example, daddy home with the rising tone. During the second year, children acquire question words such as what and where, resulting in questions such as where daddy gone. They can't yet use auxiliary verbs such as has. While in their third year, children can use auxiliary verbs and learn to say, is Joe here? However, they can't always use WH words correctly and might say things like why Joe isn't here. So aside from asking questions, children use negatives. And this also happens in 3 stages. Words no and not are used in front of other expressions. For example, no one. During the second year, don't and can't are used. For example, I don't want it. While in the third stage, more negative forms are acquired, such as didn't and isn't, and negative constructions are used more accurately. And that would be all for mental and developmental grammar. These are my references. Once again, I am Ms. Ludilyn S. Mahinay, and thank you for listening.
Good morning, teachers, especially to Doc Medrano. I am Edric Alan J. Pisano. I'm here to discuss the remaining types of grammar. So let's proceed. Let us discuss the prescriptive grammar. So what is prescriptive grammar? So from the word prescription, meaning a recommendation that is authoritatively put forward. So meaning the prescriptive grammar, the linguist will give you set of rules to follow on how we should use the language. So according to linguist Isle de Parcer and Short Longford, a prescriptive grammar is one that gives hard and fast rules about what is right and what is wrong. So here we should know if it is grammatical or ungrammatical because they set rules. And a person who dictates how people should write or speak is a called prescriptivist or a prescriptive grammarian. So, for example, a grammarian might have explained that you should never end a sentence with a preposition, or that starting a sentence with a conjunction and or but. It is a big no-no for a prescriptive grammarian. So here, the prescriptive grammar, it helps us to be a good or better speaker of the language, contrast with the descriptive grammar. So let's discuss the prescriptive grammar. Now, let's discuss the descriptive grammar. Descriptive grammar is the objective study of what speaker actually know. It does not presume to tell them how to use their language. This type of grammar looks at the way a language actually used by the speaker. Then, the speaker attempts to analyze it and formulate rules about the structure. But the descriptive grammar does not deal with what is good or bad language, so it is non-judgmental. So for us to know what is prescriptive and descriptive grammar, I prepare an example. To illustrate the difference between prescriptive and descriptive grammar, let us look at the sentence. I ain't going nowhere. So do you think this sentence is good or bad, right or wrong, or grammatical or ungrammatical? So from descriptive grammarian, there's nothing wrong with the sentence because it is being spoken by someone using the language to construct a phrase that has a meaning for someone else who speaks the same language. But for prescriptive grammarian, it is just like a virtual house horrors. First, it is contained ain't, the word ain't, which strictly speaking in slang. So although you find the word ain't in the dictionary, as the adage says, ain't word, and also contain double negative which just compounds the aristocracy. So remember, prescriptive grammarian have a rule that you don't use double negative in a sentence. The ain't and nowhere. So simply having the word ain't in the dictionary is a further illustration of the difference between the prescriptive and descriptive grammar. So descriptive grammar notes the word used in the language, pronunciation, meaning, and even etymology without judgment. But in prescriptive grammar, the use of ain't is just plain wrong, especially in formal speaking and writing. So remember, in prescriptive, we have rules to follow, but in descriptive, there is no right or wrong use of the language. I have here a video presentation of Muhammad Tayyab explaining the difference between prescriptive and descriptive grammar.
Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. Today we are going to talk about prescriptive grammar and descriptive grammar. We can also say prescriptive approach and descriptive approach to study language. When we talk about descriptive and prescriptive, that is mainly the domain of syntax. When you study grammar, structures, rules, language, constructions. So, first of all, we will talk about prescriptive grammar or prescriptive approach. We will take prescriptivist view of language. Try to understand the word prescribe. If you go to a medical doctor, he prescribes medicine. He tells you, he instructs, he gives you certain instructions for your health to have healthy, better life. Rules are prescribed, medicines are prescribed. Then you take those medicines, you apply those rules, you implement those instructions. So, prescriptive grammar means rules are studied, rules are told first, rules come first, use comes later. Prescriptive grammar tells us what should be said, what should not be said, which sentence is grammatically correct and which is not correct, and how language should be used. Prescriptive grammar does not study how language is used, rather, it studies how language should be used. And the sentences which we make should be in conformity with grammatical rules, should be in accordance with prescriptions devised by linguists or grammarians. There are formal authorities who gave certain rules which should be followed in exam or this or that. In our traditional educational system, normally prescriptive approach is used, where rules are first of all prescribed, like GTM method is employed in classroom, where tenses are taught and students are supposed to make sentences according to those tenses. For example, there is rule according to prescriptive view of grammar that we should not split infinitives. That means to cry should not be split. We should not insert any word between to and cry. Like, and to hurriedly address this issue. So hurriedly should comes first or comes after to plus first form of verb. So we should not split infinitive while using language. That is a rule in grammar. So these are different construction. So in prescriptive grammar, we are to see whether it is correct or incorrect, it is right or wrong, it is good or bad. In prescriptive grammar, we have the idea of good grammar and bad grammar. If that is in accordance with grammatical rules, we call it good grammar, we call it right, correct. And if it does not comply rules, it is not in accordance with the rules which have already been prescribed, so we call it incorrect sentence. But in descriptive grammar is non-judgmental. Non-judgmental means it does not label a sentence as right or wrong. It does not label a sentence as correct or incorrect. Rather, it tells how language is used, not how language should be used. Here, in order to understand it, we can say in prescriptive grammar, rules come first, use comes later. In descriptive, use is there, people are using it, and rules are derived from the usage. We see the regularities in the use of language, the patterns in the use of language. In prescriptive grammar, grammatical rules are explicitly told, but in descriptive grammar, rules are not explicitly told. A child is not a given set of rules. He is exposed to language. He implicitly learns all of those rules. But whenever a native speaker comes across a sentence, he can tell you whether that is right or not, that is possible or not. And descriptive grammar, we say whether it is possible or not. This kind of construction has not been seen, is not prevalent in language. So we say that this is not right sentence. So when somebody is native speaker or he has natural exposure to language, they may not be taught the rules of grammar, but still they are aware whether this grammatical construction is correct or not. So descriptive grammar is non-judgmental. Through use, they derive the construction, syntactic organization, rules, grammatical features. And in prescriptive grammar, there are certain examples where personal pronoun, objective case of personal pronoun is used sometimes, subjective case of personal pronoun is used, when it should be used. So prescriptive grammar will tell you all these rules which should be followed in the language. So these are two approaches to study grammar, to view grammar, and they have their own notions about the language. Then all of this, at the end of this lecture, we will sum up all of these points in Urdu and Hindi for the
Here are some points to remember between descriptive and prescriptive grammar. Descriptive grammar. Approach to grammar that is concerned with describing the use of language by native or non-native speakers without reference to proposed norms of correctness or advocacy of rules based on such norms. Takes the principle that the language usage can be vary according to varied speakers, thus it does not consider what is correct. Rules are made according to the daily usage of the language by the speakers. Prescriptive grammar. Approach to grammar that is concerned with establishing norms of correct and incorrect usage and formulating rules based on these norms to be followed by user of the language. Takes the principle that the long-existed grammar rules created by the native speaker are the correct and the variation are incorrect. These are specified in standard set of grammar rules. So remember, prescriptive grammar have rules, and then the descriptive grammar is non-judgmental. Let us discuss the last type of grammar, which is the pedagogical grammar. A pedagogical grammar is a description of how to use the grammar of a language to communicate. For people wanting to learn the target language, or you are a second language learner. Pedagogical grammar is conception of grammar that specifically consider the needs of learner of second language, distinguished from prescriptive and descriptive grammar. Pedagogical grammars include basic and frequently used structures, chosen for their maximum relevance to students who plan to use the language for ordinary purposes, especially academic study. So the pedagogical grammars contain assumptions about how learner learns, follow certain linguistic theories in their description, and are written for a specific target audience. So the pedagogical grammar is a grammatical analysis and instruction designed for second language students. In an introduction to applied linguistics 2007, Alan Davis observes that pedagogical grammar may be based on the following: a grammatical analysis and description of language, a particular grammar theory, and theory of the grammatical problems of learners, or on combination of approaches. So I have here a video presentation about pedagogical grammar. Remember, pedagogical grammar is designed for a second language learner to increase fluency of the use of the language. This is the end of my report. I hope you learned something from me. Thank you.
Good morning, Dr. Medrano. Good morning, classmates. I am Princess Joanna Garcia, and at this part, I am going to discuss about the theory of universal grammar. The proponent of this theory is no other than the father of modern linguistics, Noam Chomsky. He was born in Philadelphia on the 7th of December in 1928. He was inspired by his father's work as a Hebrew scholar, and so he studied his work and began teaching linguistics in 1955. He is also known as the American theoretical linguist, whose work revolutionized the field of linguistics by treating language as a uniquely human, biologically based cognitive capacity. Some of his notable works are the following. And of course, the theory of universal grammar. Before Chomsky and before the creation of this theory, there are former theories about language acquisition that explained how a language can be learned by a person or a child at birth. Most of these theories believe that true imitation or imitation is the best way for a child to learn a language. But Chomsky contradicts those theories and come up with the theory of universal grammar. This theory suggests that some rules of grammar are pre-wired into our brain and manifest without being taught. Chomsky didn't believe that exposure to a language was enough for a young child to become efficient at understanding and producing a language, meaning he didn't believe that through imitation a child learns a language. Rather, he believed that humans are born with an innate ability to learn languages, and this innate knowledge was embodied in a metaphorical little black box in our brain called the language acquisition device. The language acquisition device is a postulated or assumed organ in our brain that is supposed to function as a congenital device for language acquisition. It also suggests that a set of common grammatical rules are known to children at birth, meaning Chomsky was the first one who said that we have this language acquisition device in our brains that actually helps us learn languages. We already have this innate ability to learn languages. And that language acquisition device has a set of grammatical rules common or universal to all languages. And that's where the term universal grammar came from. Just like any other theories, the theory of universal grammar evolved over time. Chomsky listed some principles and parameters under universal grammar in the late 1970s and 1980s. The principles talk about the language knowledge that is universal to all languages, while the parameters talk about the language knowledge that varies from one language to another. The first common principle is that all languages have the same grammar categories and follow same grammatical rules. For example, in the English language, we have these categories of noun, verb, adjective, and a lot more. In other languages, they also have the same grammar categories, but in different words. For example, in French, noun is nom. In German, it is substantive. In German, adjective is adjective. Verb is the Wort. In French, adjective in the feminine language is still adjective, and in masculine language, it is adjective. So, the words may differ in or between languages, but the context is still the same. Also, all languages follow same grammatical rules because the subject and verb agreement remains the same. The next principle is the phrase structure in all languages has a head and a complement. The head determines the category of a phrase. For example, in a noun phrase, since it is a noun phrase, the head should be a noun. So in our example, the girl from Texas, girl is the head, and the phrase from Texas are the words that complement the girl. In the verb phrase work hard, work is the head and hard is the word that complements the head work. In the prepositional phrase from Texas, from is the head and Texas is the word that complements the head from. So the two common principles under universal grammar: first, all languages follow same grammatical rules and have the same grammar categories. The next one, the phrase structure in all languages consists of a head and a complement. Now let us proceed to the parameters. The first common parameter under the theory is the order of head and complement in a phrase is not fixed in all languages. Earlier, it is mentioned that the phrase structure in all languages has a head and a complement. For each parameter, the order of the head and the complement in a phrase is not fixed in all languages. Some languages may have a head initial or may have a head final structure. When we say head initial, the head is placed at the beginning of the phrase, while in head final, the head is placed at the end of the phrase. For example, the English language, which is strongly head initial structure, in the verb phrase eat an apple, eat is the head and the phrase an apple is are the words that complement the head eat. In the prepositional phrase on is the head and time is the word that complements the head on. Obviously, these phrases follow the head initial structure because the heads are placed at the beginning of the phrases. While the best example for head final structure is the Japanese language. In this example, Ringo Tabaru, which when translated to English it means eat an apple. Ringo means apple and Tabaru means eat. The verb phrase apple eat may sound grammatically wrong, but for the Japanese language, it just it is still right, or because it means the same thing in the English language. But if we're going to focus on the structure of this verb phrase, the head eat is placed at the end of the phrase, meaning these follow the head final structure. The next parameter is the subject is not always clearly expressed in all languages, meaning some languages express or state the subject in their sentences or in their phrases, while some languages do not express or state the subject in their phrases or sentences. For example, in the English language, wow, it's raining. The subject it is clearly stated. While in Bahasa Indonesia, wah, hujan, or huhan, not really familiar. I don't really know how it is pronounced. But wahoo John or wahoo Han means the same thing in English as wow, it's raining. But the subject here is not clearly stated or is not stated. So the subject is not always clearly expressed in all languages. Again, the two common parameters under universal grammar is the first one, the order of the head and the complement is not fixed in all languages, while the second one, the subject is not always clearly expressed in all languages. But in the later version of universal grammar, Chomsky said that there are just extremely general principles of universal grammar and options to be selected. He He emphasized that vocabulary is still the most important part of language acquisition. Vocabulary, or the use of specific words to specific situations. Again, when we talk about universal grammar, what we need to keep in mind is that this theory explains that we learn language because we already have this innate ability to learn it, and that is located in our language acquisition device in our brain. And that is what Chomsky believed in. Anyway, this is just a theory. So that's it about my discussion about universal grammar. Here are my references. I hope that you learned something from my discussion. Thank you for listening.
Hello, good morning. I am Miss Hernandez, and together with Miss Ortega, we are going to discuss phrases. Let us start. What is a phrase? Group of words is having no subject-verb combination, doesn't have meaning when used alone, but if used in a sentence has a unique meaning. Now let us understand its quality with this example. A beautiful home. Is it a group of words? Yes, it is. Is it a group of words having subject-verb combination? No. So, no subject-verb combination. Is it making sense while using alone? So to a group of words, a beautiful home, we are able to understand that we are talking about home. But is it conveying any meaning or thought? No. So, it has no meaning if used alone. Let us use this in a sentence. I built a beautiful home. Is this now conveying any meaning? Yes. So, a beautiful home satisfies all four conditions and hence, it is a phrase. What is a phrase? A phrase is a piece of information in a sentence made up of more than one word. It is not a complete sentence. It does not share a complete thought. And it does not have a subject or a verb. In addition, a phrase can be found at the beginning, middle, or end of a sentence. Now, let us dig in the types of phrases, and they are as follows. First, we have noun or pronoun phrase, adverbial phrase, verb phrase, adjective phrase, and prepositional phrases. Let us start with the noun phrase. We know what noun is. So basically, it is a word that names a person, animal, place, thing, idea, or concept. Now, let us understand what noun phrase is. Noun phrase consists of one or more words that are grammatically connected, with a noun as its head. Noun phrase makes the noun more specific. Like when we say woman, which is a noun, it can refer to any woman in general. But when we say the mysterious woman in black, it means we are making the noun, which is woman, more specific. Same manner, when we say car, it can refer to any car, but when we add something to modify noun, such as the green sporty car, then we are making the car more specific. So whatever we have added to modify car is called modifier. So a noun plus modifier is called a noun phrase. We can say that a noun phrase consists of a noun or pronoun, which is called head, means main noun or pronoun, and any dependent words means modifier before or after the head. Dependent words give specific information about the head. A noun phrase can be a determiner plus a noun. For example, our friends have bought a house in the village. So in this sentence, the word our is the determiner, and the word friends is the noun. And together, they form a noun phrase. Let's have another example. Those houses are very expensive. Those is the determiner, and houses is the noun. So together, they form a noun phrase. A noun phrase can also be an adjective plus a noun. For example, our closest friends have just bought a new house in the village. In this example or in this sentence, the word closest is the adjective and the word friends is the noun. So together, they form a noun phrase. In the same way, just like in the same example, the word new is an adjective and the word house is the noun. So together, they serve as a noun phrase. A noun phrase can also be a quantifier plus determiner plus noun. In the sentence, all those children are waiting for food. All is a quantifier. Those is the determiner. And children is the noun. So together, they form a noun phrase. A noun phrase can be just a noun or just a pronoun. For example, people like to have money. So here, the word people is a noun used as a noun phrase. Another example, I am tired. In this sentence, I is a pronoun used as a noun phrase. Let us now go to the noun phrases order. Before the head of the noun phrase, determiner comes first, then adjectives, then the noun acting as modifier, and the spoken stress is normally on the head. So in the sentence, a heavy iron, or in a phrase, a heavy iron gate, A is the determiner, heavy is the adjective, iron is the noun modifier, and gate is the main noun or the head. Here, emphasis will be on the gate. We know that noun phrase is noun plus modifier. Modifier can come before or after the noun. So before the noun include articles, possessive nouns, determiners, possessive pronouns, adjectives, and participles. So here, a and the are articles. Ritas is possessive noun. Our is possessive pronoun. Big is an adjective. The barking is participle. On the other hand, modifiers that come after the noun might include prepositional phrases, adjective clauses, participle phrases, and infinitives. So here, in the bench is a prepositional phrase. That looks happy is an adjective clause. Walked daily is a participle phrase. And to catch and to train are infinitives. Now that we understand what the noun phrase is, let us go to the adverb phrase. Adverb or adverbial phrase is a group of words without having the subject-verb combination that works as an adverb in the sentence. Like an adverb phrase also modifies a verb and shows how, when, why, and where an action takes place. Let us take some example and understand this. Let's have Monu teaches English. Now, if we want to know how Monu teaches English using a group of words, I will say Monu teaches English amazingly well. So amazingly well is my adverb phrase, giving the information about teaches, telling us how he teaches. So he teaches amazingly well. Now, if we want to know where the place of action takes place, let us say he teaches English at his place. So at his place is the adverb phrase giving the information about teaches, telling us where he teaches. If we want to know when does teacher or when does he teaches English, let us do this. He teaches English in the evening. So in the evening is the adverb phrase giving information about teaches, telling us when the action happens. If we want to know the reason why he teaches, let us see this. He teaches English to help his students. To help his students is the adverb phrase giving the reason why he teaches. So he teaches to help his students. So basically, just like an adverb, the adverb phrase also gives information about the verb in the sentence, telling us when, where, why, and how the action takes place. Let us have more examples. Megha eats like a crazy person. So like a crazy person is my adverb phrase giving information about the word eats, telling us how she eats. She eats like a crazy person. So it tells us how the action happens. Another, he speaks to everyone in a peaceful manner. Our adverb phrase is in a peaceful manner. It is an adverb phrase that's giving information about the word speaks. He speaks how? He speaks in a peaceful manner. Another example, Dora is working in the kitchen. In the kitchen is our adverb phrase giving information about the word working, telling us where she is working. So she is working in the kitchen. I play with kids in my free time. in my free time is an adverb phrase that's giving information about the word play, telling us when the action takes place. When do I play? I play in my free time. So next, I want to earn a lot of money to help people. Why do I earn a lot of money? To help people. So to help people is my adverb phrase that's giving information about the word want. So why do I want to earn? To help people. So as we have just seen, an adverb phrase modifies a verb in a sentence. And take note of this, an infinitive phrases or infinitive phrases and prepositional phrases can also work as an adverb. Just like in the example earlier, he speaks to everyone in a peaceful manner is a prepositional phrase that's starting in the preposition in, but working as an adverb, giving the information about the word speaks. How does he speak? He speaks to everyone in a peaceful manner. Another, similarly in the example, Dora is working in the kitchen. In the kitchen is a prepositional phrase starting with the preposition in, but working as an adverb as well. So that's it for adverb phrase.
Good day, everyone. I am Carissa Ortega, and I am to discuss the continuation of the types of phrases, which are the verb phrase, adjective phrase, and prepositional phrase. Let us first have the verb phrase. So when we say verb phrase, it is a part of a sentence that contains a main verb and a helping verb, which is also known as the auxiliary verb or the helping verb. We all know that action verbs are the words that indicate an action. For example, go, come, touch, eat, slap, kiss, learn, study, cook, and etc. Remember that a verb phrase is consisting of action plus auxiliary verb. For example, we have here, is walking. Is our helping verb and walking is our main verb. But what is a helping verb? Helping verbs, as the name goes, are the verbs that help or support the action or main verb in the sentence. They are also called as auxiliary verbs, and this includes the be form, have form, and the modal auxiliary verbs. So for be form, we have is, am, was, where, is being, am being, are being, were being, been, and etc. For have form, we have has, had, having, will have, and etc. Modals, auxiliary verbs are must, can, will, should, could, and might. So a verb phrase includes the action word and one or more types of helping verbs. For example, Jacob is playing his video game. In this case, the main verb is playing. Is, which is under the form of be form, is an auxiliary verb that is helping the main verb playing. Provide more information about when the action occurred. Together, the verb phrase is playing tells readers that the action playing the video game is happening right now. Yes is helping verb and playing will be the main verb. Next, we washed our hands before sitting at the dinner table. In this example, our verb phrase is had washed. The main verb is washed. Had is an auxiliary verb that helps the main verb washed provide more information about the action occurred. The verb phrase had washed is used to demonstrate that the action washing hands occurred before another action, sitting at the dinner table. Now, let us move to another phrase, which is the adjective phrase. When we say adjective phrase, it is a group of words headed by an adjective that modifies or gives information about the noun or pronoun in a sentence. It is not different from a simple adjective that we know. The only difference is in adjective, we are using a single word, but in adjective phrase, it uses group of words to describe or modify a noun or a pronoun in a sentence. For example, the movie was surprisingly good. So in this sentence, our adjective phrase is surprisingly good. Surprisingly good is an adjective phrase that describes the noun movie. Next example, she is a highly passionate girl. Highly passionate is adjective phrase and it modifies the noun girl. A trip with my friends is my dream. For this example, our adjective phrase with my friend, which gives an information about the noun trip. Sometimes, an adjective phrase does not have an adjective in it. It starts with a preposition, a particle, or infinitive. And this is what we call adjectival phrase. Let us first have an adjectival phrase using the prepositional phrase. A prepositional phrase that modifies a noun or a pronoun is an adjectival phrase. Again, even if it starts with a preposition or prepositional phrase, it is still an adjectival phrase because its main goal is to modify the noun or the pronoun. For example, we ordered a dish of fish and French fries. For this sentence, our adjective is of fish and French fries, which modifies the noun dish, telling us what kind of fish. Next, no one in the group has heard the story yet. Our adjective here is in the group that modifies the pronoun no one, telling which one. Now, let us have the participle as an adjectival phrase. Let us first define a participle. So when we say participle, it is a word that formed from a verb which works as an adjective. For example, the guy sleeping on the floor is my friend. Sleeping on the floor will be our adjectival phrase which modifies the guy. Next example is the shop built next to my house is huge. Our adjectival phrase is built next to my house. Starting with this past participle built, so this is an adjectival phrase because it shows us the modifier of the noun shop. Let us now have the use of infinitive phrase as adjectival phrase. So when we say infinitive, it is formed from a verb but doesn't act as a verb. It acts as a noun, adjective, or adverb, and actually made up of two words, to plus the main verb. But of course, we will focus in infinitive phrases as an adjectival phrase. For example, I don't know a person to trust blindly. To trust blindly is our phrase which modifies the noun person. Another example is, he is the guy to look for in the next match. Our phrase here is to look for in the next match. It is our infinitive phrase which starts with to look, and working as an adjective and modify the noun guy. Again, remember that when an adjective phrase does not have an adjective in it, it is called adjectival phrase. Let us now move on our last phrase, which is the prepositional phrase. But before that, let us define first a preposition. A preposition is a word that indicates relationship between other words in a sentence. They are used to specify when, where, how, and why. The most commonly prepositions are in, on, at, for, from, of, with, and to. A simple prepositional phrase includes preposition and its object, which can be a single word or a group of words expressing a single idea. The purpose of using prepositional phrase is to provide additional information about the noun, verb, adjective, or adverb. They function as either adjectives or adverbs. Prepositional phrases do not work as preposition in a sentence. So what is the use of the prepositional phrase? Prepositional phrase acts as an adjective or an adverb. Let us first have the prepositional phrase as an adjective. Actually, we already discussed this a while ago, if you can still recall. This prepositional phrase is called adjectival phrase because it functions as an adjective. For example, the guy in blue shirt is my friend. Our preposition is in. Object of the preposition is shirt. And our modifier is the blue, which modifies the word shirt. In this sentence, in the blue shirt modifies the noun guy. It gives information about the guy. Even if it is a prepositional phrase, it serves as an adjective in the sentence. Another example. The book under the table was given to me last week. Our preposition is under. Modifier is the, and our object of the preposition is table. The phrase under the table is our phrase which gives information about the noun book. It is helping us to identify the book. Which book are we talking about? The book under the table. Now let us have the prepositional phrase as adverbs. Prepositional phrase as an adverb modifies a verb, adjective, or adverb. It usually tells us when, where, how, why, or to what extent. She will meet me after the class. After the class is the prepositional phrase. Our preposition is after, and our object of the preposition is class. After the class is our adverb here because it is giving us an information about the word meet. So it is telling us when was the action happened. Another example is, I meditate in the morning. Preposition in, object of the preposition morning. The phrase shows the time of the action, so our prepositional phrase is morning and it serves as the adverb in the sentence. So for our references,
Good morning, teachers and Dr. Medrano. I will be the last discussant for group number 4. I am Ms. Doris J. Feraer, and I will be discussing clauses. A clause is a group of related words containing a subject and a verb. A class can be usefully distinguished from a phrase, which is a group of related words that does not contain a subject-verb relationship, such as in the morning, or running down the street, or having grown used to this harassment. A review of different kinds of phrases might be helpful. This simply means that some clauses can stand by themselves as separate sentences, and some can't. Other term for dependent clause is subordinate clause. This means that the clause is subordinate to other element and depends on that other element for its meaning. The subordinate clause is created by a subordinating conjunction or dependent word. A clause contrasts with a phrase which does not contain a subject and a verb. The distinction between a clause and a phrase is clearer when you see them side by side. So we have example here. The first one is when she wakes up and the other one is in the morning. As you can see, when she wakes up, this is a clause. It has a subject she and a verb wakes up. Unlike in the morning, this is a phrase. There is no subject and there is no verb. Here are some easy examples of clauses. During the day, Vlad slept in a coffin. The subject of this clause is Vlad. The verb is slept. During the day is a phrase because there is no verb. When the moon shone, he lurked in the shadows. The subject of the first clause is the moon. The verb is shone. The subject of the second clause is he. The verb is lurk. He stalked a pretty milkmaid who lived in the neighboring village. The subject of the first clause is he. The verb is stalk. The subject of the second clause is who. The verb is live. There are two types of clause. First, an independent clause, one that can stand alone as a sentence. Second, a dependent clause, one that is usually a supporting part of a sentence. Independent clauses. Independent clauses could stand by themselves as discrete sentences, except that when they do stand by themselves, separated from other clauses, they normally refer to simply as sentences, not clauses. The ability to recognize a clause and to know when a clause can act as independent unit is essential to correct writing and especially helpful in avoiding sentence fragments and run-on sentences. Needless to say, it is important to learn how to combine independent clauses into larger units of thought. In the following sentence, for example, first, Bob didn't mean to do it, but he did it anyway. We have two independent clauses in this sentence. First, Bob didn't mean to do it, and he did it anyway. This one is connected by a comma and a coordinating conjunction, but. Next, the waves crash onto the sand shore. In this sentence, above is an example of independent clause because it expresses a complete thought and contains both a subject, the waves, and a predicate, crash onto the sandy shore. Independent clauses connect other independent clauses in three ways. First one, through the use of a semicolon. If writers would normally divide two independent clauses into two separate sentences, but they decided they want to show a closer relationship between the two clauses, writers would use a semicolon to connect the two. For example, the popsicle stand had an overwhelming variety of flavors. I couldn't decide which one to get. The writer used semicolon to separate the two clauses. with a comma plus coordinating conjunction. If writers want to specify the relationship between two independent clauses further than simply placing them side by side with a semicolon in between, they can use a comma in one of the coordinating conjunction for, and, not, but, or, yet, so. For example, the new iPhone was more expensive than I expected, so I had to save for a few more months before purchasing one. In this sentence, the writer used comma and the coordinating conjunction so to separate the two independent clauses. Third, with a semicolon plus subordinating conjunction plus a comma. Writers can also specify a relationship between two independent clauses by using a semicolon, a subordinating conjunction, and a comma. For example, we had planned to go to the beach today. However, it was raining. In this example, the writer used semicolon, conjunction, and comma to separate the two independent clauses. Dependent clauses. Dependent clauses cannot stand by themselves and make good sense. They must be combined with an independent clause so that they become part of a sentence that can stand by itself. Unlike independent clauses, which simply are what they are, dependent clauses are said to perform various functions within a sentence. They act either in the capacity of some kind of noun or as some kind of modifier. There are three basic kinds of dependent clauses, categorized according to their function in the sentence. Remember that a dependent clause always contains a subject and a verb, but it cannot stand by itself. Here are some examples of dependent clauses. First, when we get enough snow, we're going to go sledding. When we get enough snow is a dependent clause. It contains the subject we and the verb get. The clause does not express a complete thought and cannot stand on its own as a sentence. Next, Damien won't be able to play in the game because he injured his foot. Because he injured his foot is a dependent clause. It contains the subject he and the verb injure. The clause does not express complete thought and cannot stand on its own as a sentence. Does anyone know what we are having for dinner? What we are having for dinner is the dependent clause. It contains the subject we and the verb phrase are having. The clause does not express a complete thought and cannot stand on its own as a sentence. There are three types of dependent clauses, and each one depends on the independent clause in a different way. First, adverbial dependent clauses. Modify or describe the main verb of the sentence, which is always found in the independent clause. These clauses start with subordinating conjunction and answer one of these questions: where, why, how, when, or to what degree. For example, we will travel to Disney World this year provided that our plans are not cancelled. The dependent clause underlined above modifies the main verb will travel by showing condition or probability. And relative dependent clauses, or the adjective dependent clause. Modify or describe a noun which is found in an independent clause. These clauses start with relative pronouns and answer one of the two questions: which one or what kind. For example, this is the letter that I gave him. In the sentence above, the dependent clause that I gave him modifies the subject this by adding specific details. Noun-dependent clauses. Noun-dependent clauses can take the role of any noun in the sentence, but if they take any role except that of the subject, they are dependent. These clauses begin with either interrogative pronouns or expletives. For example, I do not know if I can pat my head and rub my stomach at the same time. In the sentence above, the underlined dependent clause is acting as a noun direct object that answers the question, what? And that will be all for my topic. Once again, good morning.